Saint Bridget once warned that evil rarely enters a home through darkness, it enters through what feels harmless. Most people imagine evil as something obvious, something frightening, something that looks wrong the moment you see it. But Saint Bridget saw something far more disturbing. She warned that the greatest danger to the soul does not come from curses, rituals, or dark symbols. It comes quietly, through objects so familiar that you stop noticing them, objects you touch every day, objects already inside your home. According to the vision given to Saint Bridget, 2026 would not be the year of open destruction, but the year of silent invasion. Not a collapse of buildings, but a weakening of souls. This is not about witchcraft, this is not about magic, and this is not about superstition. What she saw had nothing to do with spells or occult practices. Instead, she was shown something far more unsettling. Ordinary homes with doors locked, lights on, families inside, yet their spiritual defenses were wide open. In her vision, evil did not rush in violently. It waited, it blended in, it used what felt harmless. Saint Bridget described it as a slow process, a soul distracted here, a prayer forgotten there, until one day the home no longer felt protected, even though nothing visibly changed. And then the warning came. "Watch the houses," the voice said, "for many believe they are safe, yet they have invited danger without knowing it." She was shown 3 objects, not cursed objects, not forbidden items, not things you would ever think to remove. 3 objects, all ordinary, all familiar, all already inside your home. Before I reveal the first one, I ask you to pause for a moment. Not for the algorithm, not for engagement, but as a quiet act of intention. Comment, "Protect my home," below, not as words to be seen, but as a silent prayer. Because Saint Bridget warned of something else that should unsettle us even more. Those who believe this warning does not concern them are often the ones most exposed. Stay with me. What she revealed next may change the way you look at your home and the way you prepare your soul for 2026.
Saint Bridget of Sweden was not a woman who chased visions. She was a wife, a mother, a servant of the church, a soul shaped by suffering, discipline, and prayer. Her revelations did not come from curiosity, they came from obedience. By the time of this vision, Saint Bridget had already known grief, loss, and years of spiritual struggle. She understood silence, she understood waiting, and she understood that true encounters with God often arrive without warning. On that night, she was not fasting for a sign. She was not asking to see anything extraordinary. She was praying, slowly, faithfully, as she had done countless times before. The room was dim. The air was heavy, not with fear, but with weight. What came upon her was not light. There were no angels singing, no heavens opening. Instead, she felt a pressing stillness, as if the world itself had paused. And then, a presence, not violent, not loud, but unmistakably clear. A voice spoke, not to her ears, but directly to her soul. "Watch the homes," it said, "for many have sealed their doors, but opened their souls." Saint Bridget later wrote that these words struck her with dread, not because they were unclear, but because they were painfully precise. She was shown houses that appeared safe, walls intact, families gathered, crosses hanging on the walls. Yet something was wrong. The doors were locked, the windows were shut, but the souls inside were exposed. She saw no chaos, no open sin on display, only neglect, distraction, and the quiet absence of prayer. The vision left her shaken, not because evil was powerful, but because it was patient. Saint Bridget understood then that this was not a warning for her time alone. It was a message for generations who would believe themselves protected simply because nothing seemed broken. And as the presence faded, one truth remained burning in her heart. A home can be physically sealed and still be spiritually open, and what enters through such openings rarely announces itself. It waits.
Most people believe that evil arrives with fear, with sudden terror, with chaos, with signs so obvious that anyone would notice. But St. Bridget was shown something far more unsettling. Evil rarely comes through fear. It comes through habit. In her vision, she did not see demons breaking doors or shattering windows. She saw homes that were calm, predictable, comfortable. Meals prepared at the same time, screens glowing in the same rooms, prayers shortened or postponed. St. Bridget understood then, evil does not need to frighten a soul that has grown accustomed to neglect. She was shown a powerful image, a house with every door locked, every window sealed, every precaution taken. Yet beside it stood another image, a soul with no lock at all. Because while people guard their homes with care, they often leave their inner lives unguarded. And that is where evil waits. In one moment of the vision, St. Bridget saw something that disturbed her deeply. She saw a dark presence standing inside a home, not moving, not attacking, not speaking. It simply stood there for a long time. The people inside went about their lives. They laughed, they rested, they slept. No one saw it, because it did not arrive as a threat. It arrived as familiarity, as routine, as distraction, as something that did not seem worth resisting. St. Bridget wrote that this was the most dangerous form of intrusion, not the one that shocks the conscience, but the one that slowly dulls it. This is why the warning for 2026 is not about sudden collapse. It is about gradual surrender. A prayer missed today, a silence filled tomorrow, a conscience softened little by little, until the soul no longer remembers when the door was left open. And this is the sentence St. Bridget could never forget. Evil does not knock loudly. It waits until it is invited without words. By the time it is noticed, it has already been there for a long while.
In the vision given to St. Bridget, the warning became more precise. She was no longer shown entire homes, but something inside them. Something so common that its presence felt invisible. She was shown an object found in almost every house, in wealthy homes and poor ones alike, in quiet villages and crowded cities. It was not hidden. It did not belong to darkness. It had never been created for evil. In fact, it was originally made to serve something good. People use it every day, often without thought, often without intention. It stands silently, doing nothing on its own, yet influencing more than most people realize. St. Bridget saw souls drawn toward it, not violently, not against their will. They approached it willingly, again and again. What disturbed her was not the object itself, but what happened inside the soul while it was being used. She saw hearts slowly turning inward, attention folding back on itself, gratitude fading into comparison. The soul, once oriented toward God, became increasingly occupied with something else. Not sin in its obvious form, not rebellion, but fixation. St. Bridget saw something like invisible threads,
thin at first, almost harmless, connecting the soul to this object. Over time, the threads thickened. The soul was not imprisoned, it was attached. And attachment, she understood, is far more dangerous than chains. Because chains are felt, attachment is justified. In the vision, evil did not touch the object. It simply waited nearby, knowing that anything capable of turning the soul inward can also turn it away from God. Saint Bridget wept, not because the object was evil, but because it was trusted. It stood in homes that prayed, homes that believed themselves safe. And yet she saw souls slowly bound, not by fear, but by something they used every day. Just before the name of the object was revealed to her, the vision paused, as if heaven itself wanted her and us to reflect first. Because once you know what it is, you can never look at it the same way again. And many will realize it has been influencing them far longer than they thought.
The object Saint Bridget was shown was the mirror. Not a cursed object, not an evil creation. The mirror itself is not bad. It was made for clarity, for care, for order. But Saint Bridget was shown how something created for good can quietly become a doorway when used without humility or awareness. In her vision, she saw people standing before mirrors for long moments, not simply to prepare themselves, but to measure their worth. She saw thoughts forming, silently, quickly. Am I enough? Am I better than them? Why don't I look like this or that? The mirror did not speak. It did not accuse. It reflected, and the soul responded. Saint Bridget saw self-admiration harden into pride, self-care slowly shift into obsession, and comparison give birth to envy, not all at once, but over time. The danger was not vanity alone, it was orientation. The soul, meant to be lifted upward, became increasingly turned inward. And here is what disturbed Saint Bridget most. She did not see demons inside the mirror. She saw them standing behind the gaze. Because the evil was not in the glass, it was in the way the heart learned to look. When a person returns again and again to their own image, the soul slowly forgets how to behold God. In homes where appearance became central, prayer became secondary. Gratitude faded, humility weakened. And then came the warning for the year ahead. A house obsessed with appearance, Saint Bridget was told, becomes blind to the soul. In 2026, she foresaw a deepening of this temptation, not because mirrors would change, but because hearts would grow more restless, more comparing, more measuring, more dissatisfied. The mirror does not need to be removed from the home, but it must be redeemed. Saint Bridget urged that the mirror be used with intention, as a tool, not a judge. Because when the gaze becomes disciplined, the doorway closes, and what once distracted the soul can no longer bind it. The mirror reveals more than the face. Used without care, it slowly teaches the soul where to look and where not to.
After the mirror, Saint Bridget believed she understood the pattern. But the vision did not end there. She was shown another presence in the home, not something seen, but something constantly heard: sound. In the vision, the houses were never quiet. If voices were not speaking, something else was. If no one was moving, something still made noise. Music, voices from unseen sources, endless words filling the air. Saint Bridget noticed something unsettling. The sound was not always sinful. Often it was harmless. Sometimes it was even pleasant. But it was constant. There was no space left for stillness, no moment where the soul could rest without stimulation. And then she saw how evil moved through this noise, not by speaking lies, not by whispering temptation, but by preventing silence. In the vision, Saint Bridget saw dark presences moving freely in these homes, not because they were invited, but because nothing resisted them. They did not need to argue with the soul. They did not need to persuade. They simply filled every empty moment with sound. Because silence is dangerous to evil. Silence allows reflection. Silence allows conscience to speak. Silence allows God to draw near. So the noise never stopped. The moment a house fell quiet, something else turned on. Saint Bridget understood then that this was not about volume, but about avoidance. Noise became a way to flee from interior life, and in that flight, the soul became exposed. This is when she heard the sentence that echoed through the vision like a judgment. Where there is no silence, God is slowly pushed out. Not violently, not intentionally, but gradually. In 2026, Saint Bridget foresaw homes more filled with sound than ever before. Not because people hated silence, but because they feared what they might hear within it. And so the second danger took shape. Not an object yet named, not a device yet revealed, but a condition, a home that had forgotten how to be quiet. And in that forgotten silence, something else had found room to stay.
The source of the noise Saint Bridget was shown was not a voice, but a screen, a television, a glowing surface, a moving image that never sleeps. She was not shown this object as evil in itself. Technology, she understood, is a tool capable of serving truth or distorting it. The danger did not lie in the screen's existence, but in its unceasing presence. Saint Bridget saw homes where the screen was always on, not always watched, but always glowing. Images passed before the eyes without resistance, scenes of fear, scenes of desire, scenes of conflict and excess. The soul absorbed them quietly, not through decision, but through exposure. She saw how the screen shaped the inner world of the viewer without ever asking permission. Fear entered without warning. Desire was awakened without intention. Restlessness replaced peace. And the most haunting image of the vision appeared. Saint Bridget saw people sitting before screens. Their bodies were present, their eyes were open, but their souls were absent. They did not reflect, they did not pray, they did not even resist, they simply received. In this state, evil did not need to speak, it did not need to persuade. Distraction was enough, because a distracted soul is an undefended soul. Saint Bridget foresaw that by 2026, screens would multiply, not only on walls, but in hands, in pockets, in beds. And with that multiplication would come a quiet erosion, not of faith itself, but of attention. She heard the warning spoken with sorrow, not anger. Many will pray less, not because they hate God, but because they are distracted. The screen does not demand worship, it demands time. And time, once given without measure, slowly reshapes desire. Saint Bridget did not call for the removal of screens from homes. She called for guardianship, for intention, for moments when the screen is turned off so the soul can turn inward. Because when images fill every silence, there is no space left for God to speak. And what the soul does not hear, it eventually forgets how to listen for.
After the screen, Saint Bridget expected to see something darker, something clearly corrupted, something openly profaned. But what she was shown next broke her heart. It was an object that had once been blessed, not necessarily by ritual, but by purpose. It belonged to rest, to vulnerability, to the most unguarded moments of human life. In the vision, this object was not destroyed. It was not defiled by force. It was simply forgotten. Saint Bridget saw it in countless homes, untouched by prayer, unmarked by intention, used every night, yet never entrusted to God. What made her weep was not the object itself, but what gathered around it. She saw souls laying themselves down without protection, no blessing, no reflection, no final turning of the heart toward heaven, just exhaustion. And exhaustion, she understood, is one of the easiest doors to open. Evil did not need to corrupt this place. It only needed it to remain unguarded. Saint Bridget saw dark presences near it, not because they were invited, but because nothing resisted them. This object had once been associated with peace, with restoration, with surrender to God's care. But now it had become a place where thoughts wandered unchecked, where images returned, where conscience whispered and was ignored. Saint Bridget wept because she saw how gently this object had been taken, not through violence, but through neglect. She understood then that the third danger was the most subtle of all, because it involved moments when the soul is weakest, moments when defenses are lowered, moments when the body sleeps but the spirit remains exposed. The object itself had not changed, but its spiritual covering had been removed. And when she asked why this place was so vulnerable, the answer came softly. What is not entrusted to God is left open to whatever comes. Saint Bridget could barely bear to look at it, because it was so familiar, so innocent, and so dangerously unguarded.
The object Saint Bridget wept over was the bed, the place meant for rest, for healing, for surrender. The bed itself is not sinful. It was created as a gift, a place where the body is restored and the soul is meant to be entrusted to God. But Saint Bridget was shown how easily this sacred place can become vulnerable. In her vision, the bed had shifted roles, from rest to temptation, not because of what the bed is, but because of what happens there in private. She saw sins committed not in public, but in secrecy, thoughts entertained without resistance, images recalled without prayer, desires allowed to roam freely. The bed became the place where the conscience was silenced. And what disturbed Saint Bridget most was the absence of prayer. She saw countless souls lie down at night without blessing themselves, without offering the day to God, without asking for protection. They closed their eyes, but not their spiritual doors. Saint Bridget saw something else. Evil did not attack these souls during the day. During the day, distractions were enough. But at night, it waited. It waited for fatigue, for loneliness, for lowered defenses. She saw dark presences near sleeping places, not touching, not forcing, just waiting. Because at night, the mind wanders and the will weakens, and without prayer, the soul lies exposed. Saint Bridget understood why this object was so dangerous. It is where we are most honest, most unguarded, most ourselves. And anything unguarded invites influence. The bed had once been a place where families prayed together, where parents blessed children, where the sign of the cross marked the end of the day. Now, in the vision, it had become silent, not holy silence, but empty silence. The bed does not need to be feared, it needs to be reclaimed. Saint Bridget insisted that even a single prayer before sleep changes the atmosphere. because the soul that entrusts itself to God at night does not sleep alone, and evil, which waits patiently in the dark, finds no place to stay.
Saint Bridget did not predict dates. She did not name hours. She did not speak of calendars marked with disaster. What she was shown was something far quieter and far more dangerous. A peak, not of destruction, but of distraction. In the vision, the year we now call 2026 stood out not because of catastrophe, but because of absence. Families still gathered under one roof, yet prayed together less. Homes still displayed crosses, yet rarely addressed the one they represented. God had not been removed, he had simply stopped being invited. Saint Bridget saw homes filled with activity, but empty of intention. Every moment occupied, every silence filled, not with rebellion, but with neglect. She understood then why this moment mattered, because distraction does not feel like sin, it feels normal. And when distraction becomes constant, the soul slowly forgets how to return. 2026, she was shown, would be a turning point, not because God withdraws his grace, but because many stop making space for it. The tragedy was not that homes rejected God, it was that they assumed he would remain without being welcomed. And Saint Bridget left us with this understanding. A house can contain holy symbols and still drift far from holiness, not through hatred of God, but through forgetting to speak to him at all.
Saint Bridget did not leave this warning without hope. She was clear. Sealing a home does not require complex rituals or rare knowledge. It requires intention. First, awareness. To notice what fills the home, what shapes attention, what claims time. Not with fear, but with honesty. Second, prayer. Not long prayers, not perfect words. Even a brief turning of the heart toward God restores order. A blessing before sleep, a moment of silence before the day begins, a whispered prayer spoken with sincerity. These small acts carry great weight. Third, spiritual order. Every home reflects what it values. When God is given a place, not only on walls, but in daily rhythm, the atmosphere changes. Saint Bridget emphasized that evil does not linger where prayer is present, not because prayer is loud, but because it establishes authority. And she offered this simple assurance: a home that prays does not need to fear, not because trials disappear, but because protection returns. When awareness awakens, when prayer resumes, and when spiritual order is restored, the doors once left open quietly close, and what entered without force leaves without struggle. Peace does not need to be invited loudly. It only needs to be welcomed again.
If this warning feels heavy, it is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to awaken you. Saint Bridget did not speak these words to fill hearts with fear, but to return them to awareness. Nothing you have heard is beyond repair. No home is too far gone, because evil does not rule by force. It remains only where it is permitted, and permission is often given quietly, through neglect, through distraction, through silence left unguarded. Tonight, you do not need to perform a ritual. You do not need special knowledge. You only need to choose. Choose awareness over habit. Choose prayer over noise. Choose presence over distraction. Before you leave this moment, I invite you to do one simple thing. Comment, "Lord, protect my home," below, not as a public declaration, but as a personal prayer. And if you can, pause for a few seconds and pray for your family, not with fear in your heart, but with trust. Ask God to reclaim every room, every habit, every moment of rest, because a home offered to God is never unprotected. Saint Bridget believed this with her life,
and she left us with a truth that still echoes through time. Evil only stays where it is allowed. Tonight, choose who is welcome in your home. Let this be the night when the doors close, not with force, but with faith, and let peace return quietly to the place you call home.